said, this guy, when he gets his chance, he's going to be really, really good. But to say that he will be a head coach and in his second season, take a team to the Super Bowl, I don't know, Tiffany. I don't know.
I wasn't saying you had a crystal ball or anything,
Yeah.
but maybe you saw something in him. Hello and welcome back. I say welcome back because this is our second episode of No Headsets. He is two-time NFL head coach of the year, Ron Rivera, and I'm a veteran, which sounds weird to say because I'm old now, sideline reporter. You can see me on CBS Sports. You might also know me for my work at NFL Network. But again, this is our second episode of No Headsets, and we had fun last time, and I guess some of the people liked it, Coach.
Well, they did. You know, we really did have a good time, and I appreciated the conversation as always. But I got to ask you, do you get criticized or critiqued by your family members like I do?
So I'll tell you, if anyone does it, it'd probably be my dad. And it's not even for my football acumen or anything like that. He's kind of like, hey, shouldn't you start getting your nails done? Shouldn't you start like doing TV things? So I'm like, he's basically a stage mom now.
Oh, well, my wife, definitely a stage mom, critiques me on either you're talking too fast, okay, or, you know, how come you didn't think about this, or why didn't you say that? So, man, it's tough. I prefer the regular critics as opposed to my wife.
So you want the armchair quarterbacks coming at you than your family?
Oh, I'm most certain. Them I can defend myself against. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah, usually you can't go back with Stephanie, so you just let her have the W. Hey, speaking of W's, well, Seattle won the Super Bowl, and we have a great guest coming up who was a part of that championship staff in Coach Leslie Frazier. I know you two go way back, Coach, and so we had some fun in our conversation with him. And sticking with the Super Bowl, just looking at the grandiose spectacle of all of it, what were some of the moments either, away from the game or during the game that really stood out to you?
Wow. Well, I'll tell you, during the game, I thought the play of the specialists really were a big part of it, especially early in the game, because it really kind of set the tone. I thought the play of Seattle's defense early on also set the tone. One of the things we talked about in the first podcast was the pass rush and how valuable and important that was going to be. And then I'll tell you what, I thought the entertainment, I really did. I don't know, how did you feel about all that?
Yeah, I thought the lineup of entertainers from Charlie Puth to Brandy Carlisle to Coco Jones to Bad Bunny, I thought it was an excellent choice, or excellent choices, I should say. I feel like everybody had something, so it was fun to watch, and especially with the flyover and also kind of the tributes to Whitney Houston there from Puth and from Coco with her outfit too. So I was loving all of it.
Well, my daughter went to the game. She asked me, "Hey, Dad, are you going to go?" And I said, "Well, I know why you want to go, so you can have my concert tickets." I know she wanted to check out the entertainment. She critiqued it. She was sending us updates. She was sending us pictures of what was going on. She got a shot of the flyover, which was really cool. So, yeah, I tell you, this was really, truly a spectacle and a game.
And just you're a defensive-minded coach, and I have a defensive background, whether it was soccer, but also, from my family and life in the NFL. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, yeah, I did learn something about Tiffany recently about her defensive background. From back in the day, I understand you were known as the Enforcer.
That was a nickname, and it's probably from, I think it's my mom or my dad. I played physical because that's how you have to play as an outside back, in soccer. So I may or may not have laid a couple people out. I never got a red card.
Okay, so you got a few yellow, huh? A few yellow?
So, a few yellow some mornings. But I would say if I could play in the NFL, I would definitely be a linebacker, or I would want to be a DB in Seattle's system because, like we talked about, the 4-man rush, but at points they were able to rush 5 too, using those DBs, and that was fun to watch. So defense was definitely, aside from the music like we talked about, that definitely stood out to me too.
If you really do, and you go back and look at it, you think about the things that they did commit on defense. 6 sacks, 3 turnovers, 2 interceptions, 1 caused fumble. Okay, one of those interceptions was returned for a touchdown. So yes, it was about defense, most certainly. This segment of No Headsets is presented by USAA. USAA takes care of the military community and is the only full-service financial institution that gives its members exclusive membership benefits. USAA is proud to serve active duty, National Guard and reservists, as well as veterans, their spouses, and their children.
All right, Ron, who is someone from the champs that supported their own in a big way?
Well, if you really look at it, to me, I think Michael Dixon, the punter, was tremendous. If you go back and look at it, he had 2 kicks inside the 5-yard line, 3 inside the 10-yard line, and he averaged 47.9 yards per punt.
And since you brought up special teams, I'm going to go with that as well for my first one with Seattle kicker in Jason Myers. And what he did was just incredible, right? 5 field goals in the game, setting a Super Bowl record for most field goals ever kicked in a game. And, everyone always talks about, no one talks about the kicker until they're needed. But they wouldn't have won the game, right? Without his 5 field goals and just the pressure that was probably on him to make those. It also flows into what we've talked about a couple of times now, is that take the points. You don't think you're going to be able to get in the back of the end zone. Take the points when you can. And he was able to put the team on his back in that regard and kick those 5 field goals, which is so impressive. And then someone else that I would also talk about too, because he was the Super Bowl MVP, and that was running back Kenneth Walker for Seattle. And watching him run, it made me want to reevaluate my own life, because the patience that he ran with before punching it, before making an explosive run, was probably one of the most impressive things that I've seen in a Super Bowl, because it looked like he had all time of day back there before he started to break one off. But if I could just hesitate and make decisions after just kind of, feeling it out for a second and then going, then that's what I'm going to try to do in my life. So I just want to thank Kenneth Walker out there for helping me to reevaluate myself.
Wow. Think about that. Not just an impact in the football game, but an impact in your life. I love it. I love it, Tiff. That was a great one.
And then I think another one too, which you could probably relate to too, having just supported your family, was the Sam Darnold story, right? 5 teams.
Oh, wow.
Of course, he went through some hard times with the Jets. He gets to the Vikings, has success, and then, they decide, to stay with JJ McCarthy. And here's Sam Darnold going to Seattle, and then finding his way to the Super Bowl with this team. And he said, it's special. I shared a great moment with my parents and his fiance, Katie, after the game. And then he talked about that his mom and dad, their belief in him is what ultimately got him to this position. And so, and everybody has someone in their corner like that, it's kind of like nothing can stop you, right?
If you think about it too, coming back, being part of that 2018 draft class where all the expectations of those quarterbacks have been huge, and he's the first one to get to the Super Bowl and then win it. I mean, that's a tremendous feat in itself. But, when you struggle through it, and for the most part, you don't have the career everybody's expecting early on, it's easy to get down on yourself. But you're right. His family showing their faith in him. Now his new team showing the faith in him. That's what we saw. We saw that he really elevated himself to Super Bowl status, and he came through. And again, I thought it was an amazing story.
And then the sad part about it, at least on the Patriots side of things, you walk away, you don't win, but you get there in Coach Mike Vrabel's first year with this team and Drake May being a sophomore quarterback. But when you look at what occurred after the game for them, some heartfelt moments and something that Vrabel's always been known to do after, every game too, but he just made sure to shake and everyone's hand and pat everybody on the back. And I've mentioned this before. I saw him do that after they lost in that AFC Championship game in a tough loss at Arrowhead to Kansas City. But that's someone else that has supported their team in a really special way.
Well, that really was probably about as big as it gets, especially for a head coach, because when you're down on something like that, you've got to make sure the guys understand that it's not over. This is just part of the growing, part of the learning. And as far as they're concerned, they're a young team with a young leader. They have an opportunity, and really it's about, getting past this one and learning from it. We want to thank USAA for partnering with us here at No Headsets. See if you can join USAA at USAA.com.
All right, let's welcome in Coach Leslie Frazier, an assistant on Seattle Super Bowl winning staff, assistant head coach, that is. And this is now your third Super Bowl win coming out of Alcorn State. Coach, I got to ask you, did you hit the Super Bowl shuffle?
I'll leave it up to Ron and my teammates. I'll leave it up to them. So that Super Bowl shuffle, that was a great time. But man, this is sweet. This is really sweet. Yeah.
So Leslie, how was the week though? How was the week in terms of preparation, getting you guys ready for everything? I mean, I came away thinking, boy, what a huge event this was. How did it go for you guys?
It was fantastic, man. Ron, I think back to when you and I were in the Super Bowl, and Tyrone Keys, one of our former teammates, who's a defensive lineman for us, reminded me of the 40-year span from when we won it.
Yep.
And now this win here in Seattle, and to see the transformation of the Super Bowl, the festivities leading up to the game, how big the media has gotten. But at the end of the day, when you talk about preparation, it's still very similar to what we did. We went through putting in our game plans the week before with that 2-week period that we have to prepare. We used that first week to put in a bulk of our game plan at our facility here in Seattle. And then that second week, once we got out to San Jose, doing some of the, crossing the T's and dotting the I's, but the bulk of your installation is already done. You don't want to weigh the guys down too much because there are some distractions once you get on site. There's so much going on. And then when your family start coming in later in the week, if you're not careful, that can become a distraction as well. So it was important that we got the bulk of our work done at home. And so when we got to San Jose, it was a little bit easier to kind of navigate some of the changes that were going on throughout that week. But I thought our preparation went really well. And I think it was evidenced by the way we played on Sunday night.
Yeah, your defense, it was fun to watch them out there and just kind of lighten it up. And everyone knew, this was an elite defense throughout the season. But something I listened to when Coach Mike Macdonald was him being asked questions about if the way the unit played surprised him. And he said no, because he knows his guys and how they play. Was that the same for you?
Yeah, I mean, our guys, they've done it throughout the season, and you hope that the moment's not too big, and I didn't think that it would be. We found different ways to win, Tiffany, throughout the year. And Mike and I were talking about it on Friday and on Saturday as well. We'll figure this out. We don't know how the game's going to go, but we've shown that we can win a lot of different ways. It was kind of like, the team that Ron and I played on, as dominant as we were, there were a few games, people forget this, there were a few games where it was kind of nip and tuck, and we found a way to get that win. And, we all believed that the same thing would happen on Sunday, that we'd find a way because we've got really, really good players.
Leslie, probably one of the most impressive things for me really was watching how quickly Sam Darnold adapted to you guys. He came in, his first year with the team and just kind of put himself in the middle of it. How did the team around him, how did they adapt to him so quickly? What was it that he did, or what was it that your guys did that really welcomed Sam into the picture?
Well, when we signed Sam in the offseason, it was I don't want to say controversial, but the fact that Geno Smith had a pretty good year for us the year before, and when contract negotiations broke off between he and our organization, we were in a quandary about, what's the next step. And the fact that Sam was available kind of surprised us a little bit because he had a really, really good season in Minnesota. But I guess because of some things that happened late, that made him available. So it was a pretty smooth transition to go to Sam in that respect. But as far as integrating with our team, once you get to know Sam and the type of person he is, that part of the process was seamless. He's a tremendous dude. A great guy, and he's a talented football player. And so our players saw that. They saw his demeanor, the way he handled himself when he arrived. And once we started our off-season program that April, man, it's almost April again. But once we started the off-season program, he got around our players, and they were able to develop some camaraderie. And as coaches, we were all looking just to see what type of leader he would be. And man, it was just so impressive, Ron, to see the way he would be the first in everything that we were doing, waiting for his moment to speak, wasn't trying to, come in and say, well, hey, I'm the quarterback. Look at me. It wasn't that. He was very humble, but yet extremely hardworking, and just a guy who was just one of the guys. He didn't try to stand out. He didn't try to put himself in a different role. So he was everything that we were kind of looking for in a leader. And I think for our players, it was easy from a transition standpoint to follow his lead.
The love that your team has for each other is something that each one of the players has talked about whenever they've been interviewed. And so everything, as we know, is like relationship based. And if you go back to 2016, that's when, Coach Macdonald was hired under you in Baltimore as a young coach. And just back then, did you see something in him that maybe gave you some sort of insight or indication that he would be capable of leading to a team to a Super Bowl now?
Tiffany, I can't say at that moment during that time in 2016 that I saw him in his second year being the head coach of a Super Bowl winning team. But what I did see was a guy who, in that role as a quality control coach, who busted his tail, worked extremely hard, was bright. I mean, he was really, really good. Sometimes I give him some work, Tiffany, where I say, hey, I want to write this up and I want to give this to the players. Ron knows the tips and reminders. You know this as well, Tiffany. And so we were teasing about this just a few days ago at the Super Bowl. So I'd give him my notes, Ron. He would get my notes, reorganize them, change them around, and I'd look at them and I'd go like, man, that's pretty good. I was like, okay, this is impressive. And I say, okay, thank you, Mike. And I'd be giving it to the players, and they're thinking, of course, these are all my original thoughts and ideas. And a lot of times he'd move some things around and it looked pretty good. But he never would beat his chest or try to say, hey guys, I actually came up with this thought where Coach Frazier had this thought. It was never like that. He understood his role, and there was never anything that was too small or big for him to do. And Ron, you can attest to this. There are some guys that are in that role and they keep trying to get into someone else's business instead of just being the very best they can be in the role that they've been assigned. And Mike, man, I'm going to work as hard as I can where my feet are planted. And you respect that, as a coach that's been in the league for a while, and knowing how egos can get in the way. And that was
Yeah.
never the case with Mike. He just put his head down, and whatever we asked him to do, he did it, and he did it very, very well. So I think that got your attention. So I knew that one day, if he ever, became a position coach, that he was going to excel. And one day he's going to be a coordinator. I felt that because he would do our third downs. He'd help me with our third downs and so on. And I said, this guy, when he gets his chance, he's going to be really, really good. But to say that he will be a head coach and in his second season take the team to the Super Bowl, I don't know, Tiffany. I don't
I
know.
wasn't saying you had a crystal ball or anything, but
Yeah,
maybe you saw something in him.
I did.
Well,
I did. Yeah.
let me ask you this, Leslie. One of the things and thinking back to when we were with Andy as young coaches coming into the league, the one thing that we always try to do is we always try to learn from somebody else as well. We spent time with our offensive line coach Juan Castillo to learn, how about protections. We spent time with Tommy Frazier learning about how to play the front on defense. Did you see a lot of that with Coach? Because that, to me, that's one of the things I think I'm concerned with a lot of these new head coaches is that they didn't branch out and work with other positional coaches as they were growing up in the league. And I wonder if that's part of why he's successful, because the people he's been around with, he spent time with them.
I think there's something to that. There are times he would reference his time at the University of Georgia and learning from those coaches that were there and picking up ideas and thoughts. And then some of the different coaches that have come through Baltimore when Mike was an assistant and working in a quality control position and eventually being a position coach and then going on and becoming a coordinator, he was able to interact with people with different ideas and different styles of coaching. And, he's learned from that for sure. But, some guys are in one organization And that's all they know. Those are the thoughts and ideas that they have, and they take those wherever they go. But they haven't been exposed to as much, and sometimes it can inhibit you in your growth. I think it's really good to in the off season, like you and I would do, go to the combine, get around other coaches, hear some of their ideas and thoughts about how they do things, and every now and then, Tiffany, you'll pick up some ideas and thoughts that some things you hadn't really thought about. And you hope to not get to the point where you feel like you have all the answers. You want to always be growing, and that's how Mike has been, and I think that has a lot to do with the success that we've had.
I think that's really cool to hear both of you talk about collaboration. And obviously, we know all the success you guys have had in both of your careers. I say coach, and it's so funny because I've got two of you now in this interview. But Coach Frazier, I want to go back to what you talked about with Mike and how he was maybe changing some of your notes. And again, with the collaboration going into it, you've always been like that. I was reading some other articles about you and how players could come to you and say, "Hey, I don't necessarily like this scheme. I don't necessarily like what we're doing," but you were still open to listening and making changes. How does that make your players better?
Well, I'm gonna give you the backstory on that, Tiffany. You know, a lot of people think that the defensive coordinator that Ron and I played for, Buddy Ryan, was, you know, this genius, and he was. He was outstanding. I mean, he come up with the 4-6 defense. But Ron, I tell you, we were running a 4-6 defense when we were a bad team too.
Yep.
And we got better players, and all of a sudden, we started winning games, and people were going like, "Where did this 4-6 defense come from?" But we were running the 4-6 before we became the world champion Chicago Bears. And part of what helped the evolution, this is the part that gets missed when you talk about great coaches, and this is what I learned from Buddy Ryan. There were times where Ron might have an idea, or I might have an idea, or like Singletary would have an idea, or Gary Fensick, some of the players we played with, great players. Buddy was not the type of coach who would just say, just shut up and run my defense. He wasn't that type of coach. I can remember a time we were getting ready to play at the time, the Oakland Raiders, and they had this wide receiver named Cliff Branch, great player, one of the best players to play in the league at the time, and I think he's a Hall of Famer. And so Buddy had told me during the week of preparation that, okay, you're gonna play Branch, man to man, and we want you to press him. And so I'm watching tape on Cliff Branch, and I'm going like, man, this guy's fast, he's quick, he's elusive at the line. I said, I got to be able to mix this up a little bit. I can't just do the same thing over and over. That's going to be tough. So I go to Buddy and I say, Buddy, I would like to be able to mix it up, my looks to the receiver, to Cliff Branch. And he looked at me and he said, okay, Leslie, just make it work. Just make it work. And so, Tiffany, I've never forgotten that. So when players come to me and would say, hey, coach, I don't feel as comfortable with this pressure or this coverage or this alignment. At the end of the day, they're the guys that have to go execute it and make it work.
Mm-hmm.
And I understood that from being around Buddy. We would come to him with game plan ideas and talk to him about certain things we liked or didn't like. He had no ego when it came to that. He just wanted us to make it work. Because if it didn't work, we were going to hear about what we were on.
We were, and he was going to let you know about it. And the cool thing too was, and Leslie will tell you this, in-game adjustments. If a player came up and said something to Buddy about it, he would make that adjustment. And I will say this, he even listened to me one time, and I remember just telling him, that back's getting out fast. What if you blitz Mike up inside? So he ran a 46 Samurai blitz, which was Mike Singletary going straight downhill. And I said that based off of the fact that he always used to have Sean Gale and I watching the protections. And I noted that the back was getting out real fast. And I said that to Buddy, and Buddy listened. And it's crazy. Leslie's point is, he really was such a genius when it came to that, but he listened to us. And that's what I think really helped us as a football team.
And so I've taken that throughout my coaching career. And what happens when you do that, Tiffany, the players, you gain their trust. It's no longer like a dictatorship, it's my way or the highway. Because at the end of the day, they're the guys that are out there that have to make this thing work. And you can have great ideas, but if the players don't execute, Well, that great idea means nothing. The goal is to win the game. The goal is to play really good defense. And in order for that to happen, we all have to be on the same page and we have to have each other's back. And when the players know that you'll listen to them, man, I've learned and I know for a fact you'll go through a wall for them. You'll do it whatever you can to help that coach succeed because he trusts you and you want it to be mutual. And I've been fortunate in my career to have relationships with players like that. And one of our key players, I'll tell you this quick story. I don't know how much time we have, but I'll tell you this story. One of our best players in Philadelphia, defensive back was when I was coaching the secondary, who's now pretty high person in the NFL, Troy Vincent. So Tiffany, one day of practice is on a Friday where, practice is a little bit slower, not the same tempo as a Wednesday, Thursday practice. And so Troy's going hard. He's going hard. And I'm going like, and I remember how I was as a player on Friday. I dialed it back up just a little bit because, you're getting closer to game time now. You don't want, something out of whack to happen. And he's going hard. He's going hard. And I said, Troy, you don't have to do that on Friday, man. Just make sure you're sound on your responsibilities. You got everything in place. And he turned, he looked at me and he goes, hey, Leslie, I don't want Jim Johnson, that was our defensive coordinator, or Andy Reid, our head coach. I don't want them to ever question how I practice, how I work, because I don't want them to come to you and say, why can't you get Troy to do this or get Troy to do that? He said, I don't want to ever have them come to you about my play or Bobby Taylor's or Al. So I'm going as hard as I can. And I want you to coach me, not them to have to coach me through you. And I was going like, wow. I mean, where did that respect come from? Well, it came, Tiffany, because of the way I treated him and the fact that we were able to get the buy-in from him to the point where he doesn't want to do anything that would create embarrassment for me or to put my job in jeopardy. And I'm going like, man, as a coach, I don't know if there's anything that makes you feel better than that a player is thinking about you as opposed to me, 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 me. And I still, to this day, I respect Troy so much for his having that approach and having that attitude.
Those are the type of guys that you probably have there in Seattle, right?
Yes, we do. We have guys like that who love Mike Macdonald, love our defensive coordinator, Aiden Dirty. You said it a moment ago, the connectivity of our team. There's no offense versus defense or special teams. It's a collection of guys that really have each other's back. You asked me earlier about Sam, and I don't know if you had a chance to see the post-game interview after Sam had threw some picks against the Rams.
Yeah, with EJ, Ernest Jones. Yes, yes.
Ernest Jones. And his comments after the game, that kind of permeates our entire team. And guys, they genuinely care and love each other. And that's the culture that Mike is being able to create here in Seattle. And it's something that you long for as a coach. But we've been able to get that done because of our coaching staff and the type of players we have here, where they genuinely care for each other. They genuinely love one another and they want to have each other's back. And it shows in the way we play and the way we support each other.
Leslie, when you go back and you reflect your first, let's say your first season there, did you have that sense? Did you have that feel that it was already starting that early? Was it really beginning that quickly?
Early on, Ron, I could see the camaraderie on the staff because, you hear early on without the players, this time of the year when the new staff comes in and you're trying to, get everybody on the same page. And I could see that guys genuinely were pulling in the right direction. So I could sense that we had a chance to be really good down the line. You don't know. It's February, it's a new staff. But you and I have been around long enough to know there are some red flags that if you see them, this is probably not going to work out too good. But what I saw was a group of guys who were hungry as a staff. And I felt like because of that desire and the way they were going about their business, it could spill over to our players. And then you fast forward a year or so later, and now we're Super Bowl champs. So I did see some remnants of it early on, but it took a minute for it to develop. But we had the right leaders in place on offense, defense, special teams, and it's come together for us.
Something I wanted to get into, because a conversation I had with Ron was about his mentor in this business, and he talked a lot about John Madden. And so he said some of your conversations together have been about your relationship being in that assistant head coach role with Mike Macdonald. What sort of impact and role have you played in helping him?
Well, Ron and I, we talked about this before, both of us being former head coaches. We both agreed on this. If we could go back in time, Tiffany, we would do exactly what John Snyder and Mike did here: hire an experienced head coach to help guide us along the way. Because there are so many things your first time around coming from a coordinator's position that you just don't know. You have this big book that you take to the interviews, and you answer all these different questions about scheduling, about scheme, and so on and so forth. But there are things that happen that there's no book to prepare you for those moments. Some of it has to come through experience, and uh, that's kind of what my role is to help Mike not make some of the same mistakes that I made as a first-time head coach, and to be able to see the blind spots, to be able to give advice on how to deal with a discipline issue that you didn't see coming, that no one really prepared you for. Or it could be a bereavement point where a player lost someone in his family. It's maybe a day before a game, and you got to make a decision when he comes to you and says, "Hey, you know what? I just don't know if I can make it. This is on my mind. I just lost that." And I've been in some situations, Tiffany, where that wasn't handled very well, and it caused a lot of consternation on the team and really fractured the team. So just being able to handle something that you would think is common sense. This person just lost a loved one. Football versus being with that family to support that. You think, okay, that's a no-brainer. Be with your family. Not so fast. There are those that don't always see that from the same perspective as you. So the point I'm making is just to be able to be there to give good advice, sound support, and to try to help the person in that role as head coach to, not make some of the same mistakes that other first-time head coaches would have.
Leslie and I had this conversation a couple of years ago when we were talking about this specifically, Tiff. And I think the one thing that really comes across more than anything else is you don't want to see them make the mistakes you did. And that was always my big concern, was I made so many mistakes my first 2 years. That's why I sought out a mentor. And I'd like to say to Mike's point, being wise enough already to know that. And again, his relationship with Leslie was one of those that, they had worked together. He had worked with Leslie and helped Leslie, and Leslie had helped him. That I think you can connect like that so quickly. You can see what it also shows everybody else. All the other coaches, when they see Leslie there, a veteran guy who's had the success he has, showing and working with a coach that as young as Mike, that they can work together. I think that's probably part of what you said earlier, Leslie. You saw the cohesiveness on the staff early, and that's important. I don't disagree with it. That was probably one of the really big, strong things that's probably helping you guys right now, Leslie.
No doubt. And, there were some changes made after our first season on the staff. And part of that was, just fine tuning and making sure that we were all on the same page about what direction we wanted to go. And I think some of the hires that were made this past off season really helped us to get to where we are now. And it's a very tough business. There's no doubt about it. But in order to have a chance to succeed, you need to make sure that everybody is heading in the same direction, and really nobody is bigger than the team. It's all about the team, and if you can get that across to your players and your coaches, then you have a chance to succeed. We talk all the time about in so many games in our league, it's about winning the games, but sometimes you can lose the game by your preparation and because of some things that are going on behind the scenes that manifest themselves in a game. because
Mhm.
people aren't pulling in the same direction. So that continuity and that cohesiveness on your staff spills over to your players, and then you have a chance to develop the type of culture that you want to have to be successful in our league. It's the intangible that gets lost when people are in the hiring process and they're just going for, hey, this guy, he's really smart with X's and O's. He'll be able to call these great plays. There's more to it than just being a good play caller when you're trying to build a championship club.
Talking
Agreed.
about the intangibles is probably my favorite part of talking about football. Coach Frazier, thank you so much for peeling back the curtain a little bit, showing us why you guys are Super Bowl champs. I got to end it on this, though. I asked you about the Super Bowl shuffle earlier because, I know we talked about this. My dad was on the Patriots, while
Yeah,
you and Ron were on that Super Bowl winning Bears team. So I had to give you a little bit of a hard time.
you're right. Well, that was a great time, Tiffany, for sure. And by the way, your dad was an outstanding player and very superhuman being as well. And that was a good team they had in New England. But the Chicago Bears in that 1986, 1985 season, 1986 Super Bowl, they were pretty special, Tiffany, pretty special.
Look, I asked him about that shuffle. He said they didn't care. They were going to let it affect them. So,
It's funny. I got hurt in that game, and so I'm on the sidelines, and we're getting ready to go into the half, and we have a pretty big lead at the half. I look up on the big screen. They're playing the Super Bowl shuffle at halftime. It's like it's our
Mhm.
home stadium, in the Superdome. I'm going like, man, this is crazy. But that none of us had any idea that Super Bowl shuffle would become as big as it did. And so every now and then the players will bring it up to me because they go back and YouTube it and whatever. And you know, my dancing in that thing is I'm not proud of it, Tiffany, but hey, it is what it is. It was a moment in time, a special moment in time.
hey, we'll let it slide. So, you won the Super Bowl and you got two more after that. So, Coach
Man,
Leslie Frazier, thank you so much for joining us on No Headsets.
thank you, thank you,
Thanks, brother, man.
thank you.
Who don't you know? Because anytime we've only done 2 episodes of this show now, but we always end up going down memory lane. So that was fun with you and Coach Frazier this time.
It really was. Leslie's one of my closest friends as far as football's been concerned and in real life now. But the thing that I really loved about who Leslie is he's one of those people that is true to form. I mean, with Leslie, you get what you see, and I've always been impressed by who he was. Like he said, I had a little concern about him during that Super Bowl shuffle though, because he had a dancing part, and I don't think that was his forte.
And he said the guys never let him live it down. So I had to pull up that clip, and I'm not going to say, it was bad. I'm not going to say that. But
The story about it too. A lot of people don't know this, but the Super Bowl shuffle was filmed the day or the morning after we lost to Miami, and that only lost during the during the 1985 season. That was it. Our only loss came on Monday night. Tuesday morning when we landed, a bunch of guys went to the studio and shot it. And then when it first debuted, Mike Ditka got in front of the whole team and says, "Well, you went and did it. Now you got to go out and do it. So let's go."
wait, one more thing about that. Why weren't you in it?
I was one of the guys that decided to go home and go to sleep. Everybody
Okay.
was invited. No, if you go back and look at it, you'll notice that all the guys with the main rapping parts, they were blue screened in.
You're right. You're right.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of guys went home to get rest, and a group of guys decided to show up and do it. So I was one of the group of guys that decided to go home and get some rest.
Okay. One last thing. Did you rap? Can you rap? Could you
No,
rap back then?
no,
Okay.
no. If you
So you
ask
stayed
Stephanie,
in your
first thing
lane.
she'd tell you, if you ask Stephanie, the first thing she'd tell you, Ron should have nothing to do with singing, dancing, or rapping.
I'm glad you stayed in your lane. All right, we're going to go inside the facility now, and we can look at two teams that, kind of had tough endings. I guess that's probably underselling it, but heartbreaking endings when it comes to the playoffs. And you're looking at the Carolina Panthers and the Chicago Bears. And we can start with Carolina. What are you hoping they end up doing during this offseason to try to improve?
Well, I'd like to see them refortify some of the things on defense. If you go back and look at what they did offensively, you saw a lot of growth, and that's something that had to happen. And the way he took that huge step was great. I think one of the things that Coach Canales learned is, you know, how effective that running game can be for them because the play action gets even better. And one of the things that Bryce Young does very well is play action. He does a good job throwing his eyes downfield off of the play action, seeing where the defense is, and then finding that open receiver. And then he uses his athletic ability, if he has to stretch the play out and find somebody downfield. He's not looking to run, he's looking to dump the ball. But they struggle defensively. I'd like to see them be a little bit more stout. I think they can be a really good team as far as defense is concerned. And if that happens, this is going to be a much better team. The thing I'm concerned with for them is they're going to be playing a first place schedule coming off of this past season.
And you talked about where they could be picking in the draft too, later on in the draft. That goes the same for the Bears.
Yes, the Bears are a team I think that really they're arriving a little sooner, obviously, than Carolina. I think what Ben Johnson has done as far as coming as the head coach, establishing the type of culture he wants. I love his attitude in terms of towards the other divisional foes. I think his disdain for Green Bay is evident, and I think that's what the Bear fans have wanted, was a head coach that understood what the rivalry means and how important it is to beat Green Bay. Again, if there is one thing I'd like to see that young quarterback, Caleb, to continue to grow and develop. As he goes, I think this team will go. I'd like to see him start his games faster than he did last season, because he gets to the fourth quarter when everything speeds up. That's when I think he plays his best. It's early in the game when things are kind of slowed down where I think he maybe overthinks it. But for the most part, this young man, if he comes back and he got that part of the game down because of his relationship with Coach Johnson, I think the Bears can be a very good football team. Like I said, I think they've arrived a lot sooner than Carolina has. I think they're ready to continue to compete. And again, they will play the first place schedule as well. So we'll see how that pans out for them.
Just one quick question for you with you using the arrived a lot sooner, those words together. And I look at, obviously Seattle had a quick 180 turnaround, and then the Bears 180 turnaround. Carolina took them a little bit longer, but going back to the Super Bowl with the Patriots, quick turnaround. Just what's the pressure like inside of a building that people on the outside may not know about when it comes to, hey, we're an owner, we're seeing these teams flip the script really quickly. How much pressure falls on a head coach now to try to also maybe do the same thing?
Well, there's a tremendous amount of pressure. There really is, because now the expectations go through the roof. The problem is, and everybody doesn't understand this, it is about the quarterback. Okay, it really truly is. And Leslie Frazier talked about it earlier in this conversation we had with him, was when we found the players, when we had the players. Remember, we ran the 46 defense before that Super Bowl year, and the Bears weren't very good. After we got certain players, it became a very good team. It became a very good defense. Well, it's the same thing with offense. It is about players. More important, it's about the quarterback. And you look at the teams that flipped it around very quickly, what do they have? They all had quarterbacks. So that's the honest truth, in my opinion, is this is a quarterback-driven league. You protect them, you put playmakers around them, and you have a complementary defense. In that order, that gives you a chance to go to the next level a lot sooner than people expect. That's what we saw this year. All right, you didn't see a team that didn't have a quarterback make it in the playoffs and go far, did we? No, we really didn't.
All right, so it's simple. Just get a quarterback, right, and you can win.
The right quarterback at the right time. Remember, it took Sam Darnold a little bit of time to do what? Hey, his trajectory was like this. It was flattened in the last few years. We've really seen it grow. But it's because of the people he's been around. The teams that have been around him really have been the right types of teams as well.
Sounds simple, but not so simple. But it's simple. That's it for us. So this was our second episode of No Headsets. Thanks for tuning in. Ron, I'll see you later.
See you, Tiff.